So I've got myself a new polishing wheel, and tomorrow I'm actually going to start polishing the aluminium parts of the Terminator. My permanent one just doesn't have quite enough elbow space to actually get around and do the larger parts. This is my backup grinder. It's a 1 horsepower grinder. And I've mounted it on the engine stand so I can actually wheel it around and walk all around it to reposition myself as far as the more complicated parts are concerned. Because it's on wheels, I may even wheel it outside to keep the dust factor down out of my workshop, because I'm working with the silicone and the resin and that sort of stuff. And the weather's been quite nice, so I might even work outside for a bit. I thought I'd talk really briefly about the silicone stuff based on the video that I did last. I'm not sure how much interest is in these videos, but again, if you're getting benefit out of them, let me know in the comment section. Planning on doing just a short series of these videos just to let people know where I'm up to as far as the resin stuff is concerned. What we've got here is that's the back plate piece, which has just been thickened up with the silicone based on what I said in the last video. It's also had a flange added to the outside edge of it. And I thought I'd talk really briefly about how I'm actually creating that flange system. First thing you can see is that it's actually sitting on a board there. That's to catch the overflow of the silicone, and it being on a board, it means I can just twist it around and reposition it. The board's been wrapped in just a cheap plastic sticky tape so that I can actually separate it from the board a little bit more easily. So this one's the chest plate, and if I flip that over, you can see where it's up to. That's now at the same stage roughly as when you saw the back plate in the last video. So it's due to have the thickening coats added onto it and the flange section added onto it so that it can be made in a shell type setup, so that with a seam running around the outside edge. So what I'm going to do first here is flip this over. It's already been taken off the board. I'm just going to trim up the dribbly bits and the wastage bits that's been left over when it's been on the board. And then I can show you how I'm actually setting up the flange area. So now that I've trimmed off all the little excess bits around, that outer line that I followed will actually become my seam line, and that's where I'm actually going to add the flange section. If it was a smaller mould, like the piece that I've done there, you could backfill it with clay, which is what I've done, is laid it up to a certain area, and then 1/2 of the mould goes over that, and the clay creates the outer flange area that you need, so that then you only have to backfill against that piece that you've created with the other part of the mould, and that creates the extra flanging section that you have there. Now the whole idea with this seaming area is that you need at least a centimetre or 2, depending on the thickness and the weight of the mould, to make sure that the resin, because it's actually quite runny, can't sort of escape outside those edges. That's why you need to have that flanging bit around the outside to act as a buffer zone to stop the resin from leaking out when you bring the two halves of the mould together. Because this is a fairly complicated shape and it's a fairly large piece, instead of using the clay method, what I've worked out is I can actually do a similar sort of idea using duct tape, which I can stick around the outside edge and leave a 3 or 4 centimetre gap and build it up around the outside edge. That then allows me to actually paint over it with the last coating, or the thicker coating. And as I do that, I paint over that flanging area as well, which only needs to be fairly thin by comparison. And then all I have to do is actually peel off the tape from the back, and I'm left with this nice clean rubbery sort of area. Now you can see here there's a couple of spots where it hasn't filled. Now because that's right on the seam edge, it's not that big a deal anyway, but I will actually go and backfill those with some small amounts of the silicone, and then just clean them up again, cut them back again to that seamed edge, so that I'm getting as clean a joint as possible. And I'll do that all the way around before I make a mother mould for this piece. So I'm just using the duct tape to create a seam area, and I'll do it piece by piece so that it goes around and matches up. So I'm just going to tear off pieces of the duct tape and go around piece by piece to build up that outer seam area. And the reason why I'm using the duct tape is because it's got really good stickiness, it's really good adhesion to it. Okay, so that's basically the idea. I've just run the tape around the outside and let it overhang so that I'm adding a good 2 or 3 centimetres at least to the outside edge. You can now see that it's created that lip around the outside edge, where I'll go around and I'll check whether it needs to be thickened up at all or widened up at all, and making sure that it's all stuck down in place. Then I can paint the silicone over that, and the silicone doesn't adhere to the tape at all. Once I peel the tape off, I've got that outer seam edge. I think that outlines the process fairly well now on how it actually works. So the next video I'll do is probably when these are actually completed moulds and you can see them going together. The resin itself is due to arrive any day now, so hopefully my next update video on this type of stuff will be actually pouring out some resin and producing some pieces so you can get a better idea on how the process works. So anyway guys, that's the update for this time. Thanks for watching. Talk to you next time.